My dad always said I was too pretty to be his daughter. I thought he was just being cruel. Then I took a DNA test. The results shocked me completely. They did not just answer one question. They uncovered a secret that a hospital had hidden for 29 years. Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. My dad looked at me across the breakfast table when I was 7 years old and said, "You are too pretty to be my daughter." He said it like a compliment. He was smiling. But his eyes were not smiling. And even at 7, I understood exactly what he meant. He was not saying I was beautiful. He was saying I did not belong to him. His name was Gerald Marsh. He was a tall man with dark brown hair, a square jaw, and small brown eyes. My mother, Linda, had the same dark features. Brown eyes. Brown hair. Olive skin. And then there was me. Light blonde hair. Blue eyes. Fair skin that burned in the summer sun. I looked like I had been dropped into the wrong family photo. That sentence, "too pretty to be my daughter," followed me everywhere I went. It was the first thing I thought about when I looked in the mirror every morning. It was the question underneath every birthday dinner, every school event, every quiet moment at the family table. My own father had looked at my face and decided it was proof of something shameful. And for 29 years, I had no way to prove him wrong. Until the day I took a DNA test and discovered a truth that none of us were prepared for. My name is Nora Marsh. I am 29 years old. And this is the story of how a single DNA test did not just prove my father wrong, it uncovered a secret that a hospital had been hiding for nearly 3 decades. A secret that changed everything. The first real memory I have of my father's cruelty is from when I was 9 years old. It was a school portrait day. I came home with my photo in a paper envelope. I was so proud of it. My hair was braided. I was wearing a yellow dress. I thought I looked beautiful. My dad opened the envelope at the dinner table. He looked at the photo for a long moment. Then he looked at my mother. "She's too pretty," he said quietly. "Too pretty to look like either of us. People are going to ask questions, Linda." My mother said nothing. She just picked up her fork and kept eating. I took the photo upstairs and put it face down in my drawer. I never framed it. By the time I was 12, I understood that my father's comments were not random. They followed a pattern. Any time I did well at something, any time someone said I was pretty or smart or talented, my father would make a comment that reminded me I was different. That I did not fully belong. When I won a spelling competition in 6th grade, he said, "Brains like that don't come from my side of the family." When my teacher told my parents I was gifted in art, he looked at my mother and said, "Nobody in our family draws." Strange, isn't it? My mother always stayed quiet. She would squeeze my hand under the table sometimes. But she never spoke up. I think she was afraid of what he might say if she did. My brother Daniel never had this problem. Daniel had dark hair and brown eyes. He looked exactly like my father. He got the new bike, the weekend fishing trips, the proud smiles at the dinner table. I got the long silences and the sideways looks. When I was 15, I finally asked my mother directly. We were folding laundry in the bedroom. My father was out. It was one of those rare afternoons when the house felt quiet and safe. "Mom," I said, "am I adopted?" She stopped folding. She did not look at me for a moment. Then she turned, and her eyes were full of something, not guilt, exactly. More like grief. "No," she said. "You are not adopted. I gave birth to you. I was in that hospital room. I held you the moment they put you in my arms." "Then why does Dad talk like that?" She sat down on the edge of the bed. "Your father has always had doubts. He had them from the day you were born. He looks at your face and he cannot see himself, and that frightens him. But that's not my fault. No, she said quietly. It is not your fault. She never said anything else. She picked up the laundry again. And we folded the rest in silence. I left home at 18 for nursing college in the city. I had applied for a scholarship and a student loan, and I had not told my father until after I was accepted. When I showed him the acceptance letter, he looked at it for a long moment and then handed it back. Good, he said. You can figure out your own path. That was all. My mother hugged me for a long time at the bus station. She pressed her face into my hair and held on. When she finally let go, her eyes were red. Call me every week, she said. I will, I said. And I did. Every single week for 6 years, I called her. My father never asked to speak to me once. College was the first time in my life I felt like I could breathe. I was good at nursing. I was focused, I was careful, and I genuinely loved caring for people. My professors noticed. My grades were strong. I made friends, real ones, for the first time. I also met Marcus in my second year. Marcus was studying civil engineering. He was patient and warm and funny, and he never once made me feel like something was wrong with me. He knew about my father. I told him everything on our fourth date, sitting at a small table in a coffee shop while rain hit the windows outside. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he reached across the table and took my hand. You know, that says everything about him and nothing about you, he said. I had heard versions of that sentence before. But the way he said it, quiet, certain, like it was just a fact, I actually believed it. We dated for 4 years. He proposed on a Tuesday evening in our apartment kitchen. He had made dinner and there were no grand gestures, no hidden rings in desserts. He just looked at me while we were washing dishes and said, I want to marry you. I want to build a life with you. Will you? I said yes before he even finished the sentence. We set the wedding date for 14 months out. We told our families. Marcus's parents were warm and excited. They immediately began planning, calling, asking questions. My mother cried happy tears on the phone. My father said, I'll think about whether I can make the trip. I was 30 seconds away from telling him not to bother. But my mother was on the line too, and I could hear her breathing, hoping. So I said nothing. 3 weeks later, my father called me himself. This was unusual. He almost never called me directly. Nora, he said. I want to walk you down the aisle. But I have a condition. Something tightened in my chest. What condition? I want a DNA paternity test. Before the wedding. I want proof, in writing, that you are my biological daughter. I said nothing for a moment. The silence stretched. I have lived with this question for 29 years, he said. I am not asking to be cruel. I am asking because I need to know the truth before I stand up in front of a room full of people and call you my daughter. The word cruel almost made me laugh. And if I refuse? Then I will not be at the wedding. I told him I would think about it. I hung up the phone and sat on the edge of my bed for a long time. Marcus came and sat beside me. He put his arm around my shoulders. Do it, he said softly. Take the test. Prove him wrong once and for all. I looked at my hands. And if it proves him right? It won't. But if it does? Marcus was quiet for a moment. Then we find out the truth. And we deal with it together. Either way, I'm here. I made the decision that night. Not to please my father. Not to save the wedding. I decided to take the test because I had been living with that same question my whole life, and I was tired of not knowing. I went to a certified genetics lab in the city. I brought a DNA sample of my own, a cheek swab. I also brought a swab from my mother, which she had given me willingly when I explained what I was doing. She had not hesitated even for a second. Test me, she said. Test everything. I want this over. I had managed to get a sample from my father without his knowledge, a toothbrush from the guest bathroom during a visit home the previous Christmas. I knew the results would only be legally valid if he submitted his own sample, but I just wanted to know. For myself. Before anyone else knew. I submitted all 3 samples and paid for the full panel, paternity and maternity both. The lab told me results would be ready in 3 weeks. Those 3 weeks were the longest of my life. The results arrived on a Thursday evening. I was alone in the apartment. Marcus was working late. I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and opened the secure portal. I entered my password. I opened the PDF. I read the first line. Subject A, Nora Marsh, shows 0% genetic match with sample C, Gerald Marsh. I exhaled slowly. I had expected that. My whole life my father had called me too pretty to be his daughter, and now a laboratory had confirmed what he always believed. Except he had been wrong about what it meant. Then I read the second line. Subject A, Nora Marsh, shows 0% genetic match with sample B, Linda Marsh. I stopped breathing. I read it again. And again. And a 4th time. 0%. Not low. Not partial. 0. I was not genetically related to my mother either. My hands were shaking when I called the lab's after-hours line. A technician walked me through every detail. No contamination. No lab error. The samples were clean. The results were final. I was not the biological child of either of my parents. Which meant my mother had not cheated. My father had been wrong, viciously, cruelly, relentlessly wrong, for 29 years. Linda Marsh had never betrayed him. She had been faithful. She had been innocent the entire time. But if she was innocent, if she had truly given birth to a baby girl in that hospital 29 years ago, then where was that baby? And who was I? I drove to my parents' house the next morning. I did not call ahead. My mother answered the door in her dressing gown. She took one look at my face and stepped aside without a word. We sat at the kitchen table. My father was still upstairs. I put my phone in front of her with the results on the screen. She read them slowly. I watched the color drain from her face. "This is a mistake," she whispered. "It's not," I said. I called the lab. 3 times. "It's confirmed." But I was there. Her voice cracked. I was in that delivery room. I was in labor for 16 hours. They put a baby in my arms and that baby was you. I felt it. I knew. "I believe you," I said. "That's exactly why this result doesn't make sense. Because if you gave birth to a baby girl that night, and that baby girl is not me, then something happened in that hospital. Something went wrong. And someone has been hiding it." My mother pressed her hands flat against the table. She looked like the room was moving. "Gerald," she called upstairs. Her voice was very quiet. He came downstairs in his usual slow way, coffee mug in hand. He saw me sitting there and his expression tightened. "The results came," I said. I pushed the phone toward him. He read them standing up. I watched him read the first line and feel the victory arrive in his face, and then read the second line and watch that victory dissolve into something confused and hollow. "What does this mean?" he said. "It means Mom never cheated," I said. "It means you spent 29 years punishing her for something she never did. And it means someone switched babies at the hospital the night I was born." The coffee mug landed heavily on the counter. No one spoke for a long time. My mother's name before she married my father was Linda Calloway. She had given birth to me at Greenfield Memorial Hospital on the 14th of March, 29 years ago. A week after the DNA results, I drove to the hospital records department and submitted a formal request for my original birth records. The clerk told me it would take 10 business days. In the meantime, I searched online. I found an archived local newspaper article from 30 years ago about Greenfield Memorial, a brief mention of a staffing review following an administrative incident in the maternity ward. No details. The article was 4 sentences long. It had never been followed up. When the birth records arrived, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot and opened the envelope. My birth was listed at 11:52 p.m. on the 14th of March. But there was a note in the margin of the original document, handwritten, in faded ink, that read, "Confirm time with attending nurse. Discrepancy noted." A discrepancy. Someone had flagged it and then buried it. I started looking for the nursing staff from that night. Most hospital records from that era were not digitized. I filed a formal records request and was told the staff logs from that unit had been archived off-site. Then I found a name. Through an old employee directory that had been uploaded to a hospital alumni website, I found a head nurse who had worked in the maternity ward at Greenfield Memorial from 1988 to 2001. Her name was Patricia Okafor. I found a phone number through a public directory. I called it on a Sunday afternoon. She answered on the 3rd ring. "Mrs. Okafor," I said. "My name is Nora Marsh. I was born at Greenfield Memorial on March 14, 29 years ago. I have DNA evidence that proves I am not the biological child of either of my parents. I believe a baby was switched in the maternity ward that night. I believe the hospital knew." A long silence. "Who gave you this number?" she said. "I found it myself," I said. "I am not looking to cause trouble. I am not going to the media. I just need to know what happened. And I need to know who I am." Another silence. Then, "I can't talk on the phone. If you want to meet, it will be in a public place. And you will come alone." We met at a small cafe near the old part of the city, 3 days later. Patricia Okafor was in her late 60s. She had silver locks pulled back neatly and reading glasses on a chain around her neck. She was already seated when I arrived, her hands wrapped around a cup of tea, her eyes watching the door. She watched me walk in. She watched me the whole way to her table. And when I sat down, she said, quietly, "You look exactly like her." I felt the hair rise on my arms. "Like who?" She reached into her bag and took out a manila envelope. Inside was a photograph, old, slightly faded, printed on the kind of glossy paper they used in the 90s. It was a woman. She looked to be in her mid-20s. She had light blonde hair and blue eyes and a jaw that looked exactly like the one I saw in my own mirror every morning. "Her name is Susan Hale," Patricia said. "She gave birth the same night as your mother. Same ward. Same shift." She opened a small notebook, old, the cover worn soft, and laid it on the table between us. "I kept this," she said. "I should not have. But I kept it because I knew one day someone would come looking." The notebook was her personal shift log from that night. I could see the entries in her careful handwriting. 11:38 p.m., baby girl born to L. Marsh, Ward 3. Healthy. 7 pounds 2 ounces 11:59 p.m., baby girl born to S. Hale, Ward 5. Healthy. 6 pounds 14 ounces 1:14 a.m., both infants bathed and tagged by junior nurse, M. Reeves. 2:40 a.m., discrepancy in ankle tags noticed during routine check. Investigation begun. 3:15 a.m., meeting with hospital administrator, Dr. F. Coulson. 3:55 a.m., decision made at administrative level. Families not to be informed. Records to be corrected. All staff present required to sign non-disclosure agreement. I read it 3 times. Then I looked up at Patricia. "They knew," I said. "That same night. They knew and they covered it up." She nodded. Her hands were very still around her teacup. Dr. Coulson was afraid of a lawsuit. The hospital had already had a legal case that year. He said both families had bonded. He said disturbing them would do more harm than the mistake itself. He made that decision for everyone. Yes. Did the other family ever find out? Susan Hale. Patricia shook her head slowly. Not as far as I know. She moved away. I lost track. She paused. I signed the agreement. I was 26 years old. I had 2 children. I was afraid. She looked at me directly. I have been sorry about it every single day since. Susan Hale had moved away from the area about 2 years after I was born, according to Patricia. She thought she remembered someone saying Susan had gone to the northern part of the country, somewhere near the coast. I hired a small private records search firm. Within a week, they found her. Susan Hale. 54 years old. Living in a coastal town about 4 hours north. She had a daughter she had raised and loved and never had any reason to question. Her daughter's name was Melissa. She was 29 years old. She had dark brown hair and brown eyes and a jaw that looked exactly like my father's. I composed the message to Melissa Hale 41 times before I finally sent it. I kept it simple. I told her my name. I told her the date I was born. I told her about the DNA results. I told her that I had evidence of a hospital mix-up and that I believed our families had been affected by it. I told her I was not looking to disrupt her life. I just needed to know the truth. And I thought she deserved to know it too. I sent it on a Wednesday night and then sat with my phone face down on the table for 2 hours. At midnight, it rang. Is this Nora? The voice was cautious. A little shaky. Yes, I said. A long breath on the other end. My whole life, people told me I didn't look like my mum. I thought it was just one of those things. My mum used to laugh about it. She used to say maybe the stork got confused. A pause. I think the stork really did get confused, Melissa said. We talked for nearly 4 hours that night. By the end, we had agreed to take a DNA test together, comparing Melissa to my parents, and me to Susan Hale. The results came back 10 days later. Melissa Hale showed a 99.96% genetic match with Gerald Marsh and a 99.97% match with Linda Marsh. She was their biological daughter. She was the daughter my father had been searching for in my face for 29 years, and she had been living 4 hours away the entire time. And I showed a 99.95% genetic match with Susan Hale. I had a biological mother. She was alive. She was 4 hours north. And she had no idea I existed. Telling my parents took a full evening. I sat them both down in the living room, the same room where my father had given me 1,000 cold looks, where my mother had squeezed my hand under the table 100 times. I laid out everything. The DNA results. Patricia's notebook. The hospital records. The names. My mother wept quietly through most of it. Not out of sadness, exactly. Out of relief, I think. 29 years of being called a liar, quietly, persistently, by the man who was supposed to trust her most, and now here was the proof, in black and white, that she had never lied at all. My father sat very still. When I finished, he did not speak for a long moment. The room was very quiet. Outside, a car passed on the street. I was wrong, he said finally. His voice was rough. About your mother. About all of it. It was the first time in my life I had ever heard those words from him. You were, I said. I kept my voice even. You spent 29 years calling me too pretty to be your daughter. You used my face as evidence against my mother. And all along, the answer was not an affair. It was a mistake made by a tired nurse at 2 in the morning, and a hospital that chose to hide it. He said nothing. There was nothing to say. You were wrong, and it cost Mom a great deal. And it cost me a great deal. An apology to me can wait. But she needs to hear it from you. She has needed to hear it for a very long time. He turned to my mother. I watched his face do something I had never seen it do. It simply gave up holding itself together. Linda, he said. I am sorry. I should have trusted you. I should have trusted you from the beginning. My mother looked at him for a long moment. Then she nodded, once. She did not say it was fine, because it was not fine. But she accepted it. And that was enough for now. Reaching out to Susan Hale was the hardest thing I have ever done. I called Melissa first and asked if she could help. She spoke to her mother to prepare her. She told her there was something important she needed to hear from someone. Then I called Susan myself. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was warm and a little husky. She sounded like someone who spent time outdoors. Nora, she said. Yes, I said. Melissa told me a little. Not everything. She said I should hear it from you. So I told her. I told her all of it. I told her about the DNA results and the hospital and Patricia Okafor and the notebook. I told her about growing up blonde in a dark-haired family. I told her about the looks and the comments and the years of not knowing. When I finished, Susan was quiet for a long time. I gave birth to a baby girl, she said finally. And they put her in my arms. And I called her Melissa, and I brought her home, and I raised her. And she is my daughter. She will always be my daughter. I know, I said. I don't want to change that. But you are also, she stopped. Her voice was thick. You are also mine. In a way I didn't know about until right now. We were both quiet for a moment. I would like to meet you, she said. When you are ready. No pressure. No expectations. Just, I would like to see your face. I would like that too, I said. The wedding was 3 months later. Marcus and I got married in the garden of a small inn outside the city. The weather was perfect, late summer, warm but not hot, with a light wind moving through the trees. My mother walked me down the aisle. She wore a pale green dress and she held her head high and her steps were steady. She looked like a woman who had set something heavy down after carrying it for a very long time. My father sat in the second row. He had asked to walk me down the aisle and I had told him gently that I wanted my mother to do it. He had accepted that without argument. He was still working, I think, on learning how to just accept things. Melissa sat on the left side of the venue, near the middle. We had met in person 3 times by then and it was still strange and wonderful and occasionally a little awkward, like learning a song you feel like you should already know. Susan Hale sat near the front on the right. She had driven down the evening before and we had had dinner together, just the 2 of us, at a quiet restaurant. We had talked for 3 hours. She had shown me photographs of her garden, her little house by the coast, the dog she had rescued 2 years ago. I had shown her photographs of my nursing graduation and my apartment in Marcus. At one point she had reached across the table and touched my hand and said, "I'm so glad you found me." And I had said, "I'm glad too." At the wedding, when the officiant asked who gives this woman, my mother said clearly, "I do." In the front row, I saw Susan smile. Patricia Okafor gave a formal notarized statement about what she had witnessed at Greenfield Memorial Hospital on the night of March 14, 29 years ago. We submitted it to the hospital's oversight board along with the DNA results and the birth record discrepancy. The hospital issued a private statement acknowledging the administrative error. Dr. Carlson had passed away 11 years ago. But the institution accepted responsibility. There were discussions about a settlement. Those are still ongoing. I am not doing it for the money. I am doing it so that if this ever happened to anyone else, if there is another family somewhere living with a question they don't have the words for, the door is open to find out. 6 months after the wedding, Marcus and I found out we were expecting. I told my mother first. She cried. She put her hands over her mouth and she cried and then she laughed. I told Susan the same evening. She went very quiet for a moment. Then she said, I get to be a grandmother. It was the first time either of us had put it into words like that. And it sat between us on the phone, warm and new and entirely real. My father called me that weekend. He had heard through my mother. He said, Congratulations, Nora. You are going to be a wonderful mother. Simple words. No condition attached. No sideways look hidden inside them. It was the nicest thing he had ever said to me. My child will never wonder if they belong. They will never sit at a table and feel the cold weight of someone's doubt pressing down on them. They will never look in the mirror and search their face for a resemblance they cannot find and feel afraid of what that means. I will tell them the truth of their story when they are old enough to understand it. I will tell them about the DNA test and the hospital and the nurse with the notebook and the woman who lives by the coast who has my eyes. And I will tell them this, the thing I needed someone to tell me for 29 years. A family is not built from matching features or shared blood. It is built from showing up. From choosing someone on the hard days as well as the easy ones. From squeezing a hand under a table when you cannot yet find the words. From driving 4 hours to sit across from a stranger and say, I'm so glad you found me. My father spent 29 years looking at my face and calling me too pretty to be his daughter. My mother spent 29 years looking at my face and seeing her child. She was right all along. And this baby I am carrying, this child who is coming into a family made not of perfect biology but of hard-won, deliberate, chosen love, they will know that from the very first day. That is the only thing that matters. That is the only proof that has ever mattered.